Hello, this is 2 Minutes About Time with Luke Allen and Robert E.G. Black, the podcast that takes a look at the film About Time 2 minutes at a time. I am Richard Curtis, and I hope you enjoy it. And if you don't, well, you can just travel back in time 2 minutes and listen to something else.
I'm one of your hosts, Luke Allen, joined as always with my co-host Robert E.G. Black.
Hello.
And our special guest for this week, Piotr.
Hi.
We're here to talk about minutes 28 and 29 of About Time. Don't know why I need to specify of About Time. I'd hope that they know what we're talking about. We open with Harry saying, "They'll say major actor gets Alzheimer's," which Tim follows off with, "That's a disaster," is an understatement, as Harry continues. It's the Titanic of play openings, but with no survivors. No women, no children, not even Kate Winslet, all dead. It's just such a good line.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, it's the phrasing. It's just the because everybody's picturing it in their mind. Like you're saying, you want to be in that theatre. You want to see how awful it was, and just the picture. I mean, he just paints the picture beautifully, doesn't he?
Once again, I think it's one of the great things with this, because there's so much of this where I say, I wish we could see this, I wish we could see that. There is life going on outside of the film.
Yeah.
And I think that makes it feel more real. Like, things happen that we don't see, and we don't need to know that we don't need to see them in order for the story to work. It feels as though other people are having their own stories just as life is. Yeah,
it was like you said. I mean, the way when he came back to the house on his own and Jay was off with the Vanessa Kirby character, you can almost imagine what was happening in the cab, or that was or when Mary joined them or whatever was going on there. But that was something, as you say, we don't need to see, but it was clearly something that was there and was happening. But we don't need to know about it.
So then Tim says, "Okay, I'll see what I can do." What does that mean? What are you going to do? Ring up every critic in London and offer them a if they ignore the fact that we sat in total silence for half an hour waiting for a moron to remember one single line?
I mean, again, it's just that you just feel for him, don't you? You just feel for him that every critic is just going to come down on him like a ton of bricks. It's like his life is over. This is that thing of, this is what's going to define him for the rest of his life. I mean, it's just awful. You feel for him. You completely feel for him. And the way he delivers it's so funny. You feel for him even more because he's being funny with it as well.
Well, and Tim is already walking out of the room and Harry follows after him, still talking.
Yeah.
He just doesn't care at this point. Like, Tim knows if he's rewriting it, it just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Which, once again, I think I said before, like, I'd love to have just seen a scene where Tim is just careless. Like, he just goes about saying nasty things to people or, like, robbing shops and things because he knows he can just go back and change it afterwards. I think it would have been hard within the Tim character for us to relate to him through that, but it seems like a sort of thing which you could imagine happening.
Yeah, but again, I mean, it's what, as a writer, again, I would have thought it's what you're trying to the emotions you're trying to create in the film. You want, if you want people to like Tim, then he's got to do nice things, and you got to feel for him because he messes up his own life by trying to be good.
Yeah.
In this way, so you feel,
and
for
he's
him
good
even
from
more.
the start.
So absolutely, so you're constantly you're rooting for him, and I think if you're with him through the whole film, as you said, Robert, I said that I liked him almost straight away. Well, that's good. Well, somebody else may not like him straight away, and you kind of have to work for it. But you feel for him, and you've got to feel his feelings. And so especially when he's got that thing he wanted and he loses it, and now the rest of the film is him trying to get it back.
Yeah.
And you're on that journey with him. So in this moment, if you don't like Tim, you've turned off already probably by now. But from now on, I mean, that's it. It's not working, clearly.
Yeah, this isn't like, I keep coming back to Groundhog Day. That character starts out as unlikable. And so it's okay that he has that segment where he does bad things. Because we're like, yeah, that makes sense. He has to become a better person. Tim seemed like an okay guy from the start. So we can't have him doing horrible things.
No, because you already feel for him. Because as I say, the first narration, I think he says, I'm too skinny, I'm too orange or whatever it is, or too ginger, all that. He's self-deprecating, you kind of, he's a bit like the Harry character in that he knows his flaws and he knows, right, my life's not going to be easy because, I don't have the tools, if you like. And, when you see the Margot Robbie character, every guy in the cinema goes, oh God, I'm not, he's not good enough for this girl, or what we think is not good enough for her. He himself thinks, oh, I'm not good enough for someone so gorgeous, So you feel for him.
And I think one thing which I just like at this moment, looking at the visuals, is that as Tim walks away, and as you said, Harry follows, it almost feels so much more real and natural with the fact that he stops in the doorway and starts calling up.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can't tell what it is about that makes it feel more natural, but that just feels like the sort of thing that people would do.
Yeah, he's not going to follow him. He's not going to follow him up the stairs, and, in that moment, it's like, well, I've told you, and, you've left the room. He's in the kitchen, to leave it. That's his thing. He's feeling sorry for himself in the kitchen in a way.
He's not about to chase after him, yeah.
No, and why? I mean, like I say, he's going, Tim's leaving the scene. He's not leaving the scene.
Right. He just had to finish the long sentence before Tim was out of earshot. That's all.
Yeah, it's like, I haven't finished yet. I want to tell you how awful it is. I'm on a roll here.
And then Tim just says, not quite that, as he goes up. And actually, this is like the reverse of what we did have with Tim and Mary early on. We're on the closer up shot on Harry, and Tim's from the distance, which is quite interesting. They're shot in that way. And actually, we get to see the bedroom again.
And it's still decorated,
he hasn't taken down the Britney Spears poster or anything.
But he's a guest. Would you do that? I mean, if you're a guest in someone's house, you're not going to kind of redecorate the place. He's been given that bed, he's been given that room, but it's not his. And again,
is there any indication
as to how long
is there any indication as to how long he's actually supposed to be there for? Because he's just
however long.
I think
it depends how law school goes. I don't know how long that takes in this setup.
Yeah, I think it's sort of open ended. I think it's a case of I'm going to use the room and see how it goes. Because he's come to London and I don't know what's going to happen. He doesn't know what's going to happen. So I think even more so, it's one of those things. He's not going to come in and start redecorating.
I like how the bed is like half made, like he's made the bed ish, but it's. I don't know, it feels more real once again that it's sort of like roughly made and he's gone back about his day.
I mean, it's not a family
there's no
home.
one he's trying to impress.
Mum's not going to come in and say, why haven't you made your bed? It's that classic thing when you leave, when you first leave home, you kind of go a bit mad that you don't do anything. You leave everything lying around on the floor, because you can. And then you get tidy again because it starts to annoy you. That's how I felt. I mean, again, everyone will come to it differently. I wanted to go back to what you said about staying close on Harry and seeing Tim walk up the stairs. Because again, that's an easy way of saying, in this moment, our focus is on Harry.
Mm-hmm. Harry's
whereas before,
and Tim's
as you said,
is on Harry.
You saw the POV of Mary going down the alleyway, but we were with Tim looking at her. Yeah. Now we've kind of we want to know. Because we know what he's going to do. We know he's going to go upstairs and he's going to go back in time, so we don't need to go with him. Here, we want to know, we're kind of going, it's almost like saying, oh, Harry, you don't know what's going to happen now. Don't worry about it,
It's quite good that Tim actually can go back in time in that room in the dark, because his dad said cupboards or bathrooms at a push.
Yeah.
So he's succeeded with the bedroom quite well.
Yeah, I suppose,
I guess it's quite late at night, isn't it?
Yeah, and this is what we were talking about in the last podcast, in that thing of the whole, if you go into the technicalities of and the rules of this time travel, you're kind of missing the point.
It breaks a piece in your hand. It breaks to pieces in your hands, but it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
That's not what the film's about. It's an anti-time travel film, so they don't need to talk about time travel.
Yeah. It's a device to tell the story, but in the end, because in the end, it comes around, as he says, is like going back in time, isn't this blessing that everyone thinks it would be? It ultimately becomes a curse, or could become a curse. So it's more that of, we go off and use this device thing, and then in the end, we come back and realize that it doesn't matter if you've got it or not. You've got to kind of live life, day by day.
You don't watch Toy Story and question why the toys can talk, and you don't watch The Shining and question why there are these things in the hotel. It's just, that's how the film works. Let's tell a story with it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think if you actually stop and if you watch the film and try to and tried to analyze the rules of the time travel and whether he's breaking them or not. Well, I tell you, one, you're gonna freak yourself out and probably make yourself a bit ill. But the other is, say, it doesn't matter. That's not the point.
Yeah. So, Robert, how does the flashback go?
Well, we're flashing to a moment we haven't seen yet, so it all goes just in reverse order. It keeps it simple. What I was disappointed by, though, here is there's no flash of darkness. I really wanted a flash to them in the restaurant. Would have been hilarious.
Yeah, because we only see them outside when it's all happening. Yeah. And then it just...
It goes from Joanna getting pulled away by Jay to Jay and Tim being led in by Carlo. It skips the darkness. And I'm like, that would have been great. Just have a second
Are these all the exact shots that we see in the film?
Yeah.
Okay. That makes more sense.
Which is why it doesn't do the weird, slightly out of order thing at the end of the Flash, is because we're going to a scene that didn't happen. So that original doesn't exist.
And then, as we said, it's his name up with the play.
Mm-hmm. On the old
A Guilty
Vic.
Man, Harry Chapman.
Where Groundhog Day premiered, by the way.
Oh, really?
The musical.
Really?
Yeah.
At the old Vic?
At the old Vic, yep.
Robert, I'm actually intrigued. What made you start the Groundhog Day project?
It was a fluke. Life was going through a change, and I was in grad school, and it was still summer break, and I needed something to do. And then as soon as I started it, I knew it was going to last a while.
Yes.
So how long did you end up going watching Groundhog Day every day?
I watched it every day for a year, and then I'd watch it once a month for the next 3 years.
Wow.
And with other movies on the other days.
Wow. Can you still watch it?
Yeah. I watched it on Groundhog Day this year. I watched it again. It seems super short now when I watch it, though. It flows so quickly.
Well, yeah, because you absolutely know
press play and it's over.
Cut,
I'm like, okay.
You know everything that's happening.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I mean,
so you said that will happen with this as well for me.
Yeah, by the end it'll
extent.
flow differently when you watch it after this.
But that's always also the mark of a good film. I mean, I've obviously got your film library, and even I thought when you could first buy films, on VHS, DVD, it's like, would I ever watch these films again? And the thing is, you do. And even more so if you leave it for 10 years or something. You change as a person and you approach that film differently. The film itself, which at the time was relevant and kind of now suddenly becomes a period piece because, watching Back to the Future is not just watching Back to the Future, but you're also 1980 now is the past. So, it becomes a different film. And so, it's why we can watch black and white movies and they can be relevant. Plus, they're also a period piece. I mean, that's the thing about, a good film. You can watch it over and over again and see something different every time. When I did the podcast about The Godfather, we were talking about that. Raiders of Lost Ark, I've watched, I don't know how many times. I lost count of how many times. Every time I watch it, I have to watch it all the way through and I love it. And I see different things in it. You start looking at the production design, you start looking at the wobbly sets, all that stuff, and you just love it on all those levels because it always works.
Do you have a go-to rewatch film? Because for a while I watched National Lampoon's Vacation loads, and I really loved it, and then it sort of became a bit too much, and then I hadn't watched it for like a year or two, and I went back, and it was great watching it in that view. So, obviously, I'm now really careful whenever I watch any other film, like, especially About Time. Like, I always make sure that it's not a film I'll ever have on just in the background. Like, it's one which I have to fully enjoy, because otherwise I'm worried that it will lose that. But I think my go-to rewatches I can think of is, I guess I watch Les Mis quite a lot, because my sister really likes Les Miserables. She's watched it, like, 36 times or something. Nice. And I've probably been there most of the times that she's watched it. Other than that, like... I mean, it obviously depends what mood you're in.
Yeah.
I think if I'm in the mood for sort of a silly comedy, I'll watch like National Lampoon's Vacation. I can't think what else, but there's definitely a few films which I will rewatch quite regularly. Do either of you have sort of that cycle of films?
Well, I mean, this might be one for Robert when you're actually working on the musical. The film I have it kind of ruined for me was I was working at Sky Television. And I was doing a promotion when they were showing Goodfellas. And so I was kind of picking out quotes and scenes and making promos from the film. And now I kind of struggle to watch Goodfellas and I can't watch it because all I can see is myself editing these bits out. And I watch it in kind of bite sizes and it ruined it for me. So working on it, just watching a film over and over again when you feel in the mood, like you're saying, Luke. Never. I don't think there's a film that, because you just don't watch it. If you're not in the mood, you just don't watch it. It just happens to be that, when I see The Godfather, there's a moment where you go, I quite fancy watching that, and you see it and it works. But physically working on a film or having to kind of, take it apart like this, like About Time, I mean, I think this is slightly different because you're not kind of, you're not editing it in any way. But that was the experience I had. Goodfellas, I struggle to watch now because I just see it as work.
I am kind of worried as to what this whole podcast will do to this film. I hope it'll mean I'll appreciate it more. And I hope it doesn't. I hope it adds more to it rather than taking stuff away, which I'm sure it will.
You might go through a phase where it takes away from it, and then it'll loop back and make it better, in the way I experience it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd agree.
I think I probably won't watch it all the way through until after we've done all of these. Like, we're a quarter of the way through the film already.
Yeah.
Which is shocking, really, as to how quickly we've managed to do this. Well, I guess that's what happens when we do 5 minutes per week and record 2 weeks in a week.
Yeah.
I guess it adds up.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is it's not just you working on it. When I was working on the Goodfellas thing, it was just me, in an edit suite, going backwards and forwards and making ins and outs. And I was really I wasn't analysing it. I was literally just picking quotes from it and trying to make a trailer kind of out of it or a promotion out of it. In your case, you're analysing it and you're talking about it and you're also getting our views of it, on it as well, other people's views on it, which is also interesting. So you can then watch the film now with a new perspective. So it's another reason to watch it. So I think if anything, it will be a good experience, not a bad one.
Incidentally, if any of our listeners haven't seen the film or hate the film, really be good to have someone on with those opinions, because incidentally, everyone I've chosen so far has loved the film, which is great, but I'd love to hear someone explain why they don't like it, or someone see a scene like this for the first time. Like, Robert, has there ever been a Movie by Minute podcast wherein, like, one of the hosts is only watching the film for the first time each minute? Because I feel like that'd just be kind of interesting.
I think someone asked that question once, and there was one, but I don't remember what movie it was. That was sort of what I did with Mandy. It was literally the second time I watched it was minute by minute, complaining about every minute of it. No, not every minute. There was 1 minute where I had no complaints.
That would be interesting. I mean, to watch a film you've never seen all the way through and just watch it minute by minute.
I did that to other people with Dave Made a Maze.
Dave Made a Maze.
I sent out random minutes to people, and then they each had 3 to 5 minutes of the movie, often out of order, and they didn't even know where it was.
And you with that as well, it wasn't necessarily, or at least the 2 episodes I did, you weren't talking with us.
No, it was
you
just
gave
other
them
people
to us and was like, you were like, right, record a minute, or record an episode of this. And I think most of my episodes were me Googling the film, because I was like, I don't know what I can say to myself. My co-host dropped out last minute.
Yeah, so you had to do it by yourself.
It was just me talking to myself for 20 minutes. One of those 20 minutes being when my mic was unplugged, so good work on the editing with that. I've had a real pain with the 3 episodes of this where my mic wasn't plugged in.
Yeah.
Luckily, it's ever so slightly nicer when the other 2 do have their mics plugged in.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the thing about watching it minute by minute, I mean, you get that idea of, we've all watched a film where I'm sure, you've watched the first half hour and gone, I don't know about this at all. It's not really doing anything for me. But then by the time you got to the end of it, you've gone, oh, right, I get it. Because, the ending has made sense at the beginning or whatever. I mean, it's that thing of it's why I can never understand when people say, oh, well, I left after half an hour, I couldn't take it anymore. Say, yeah, but you haven't watched the film then, because however painful it is, you've got to watch all of it.
Yeah.
There's only a few films that I literally couldn't, I don't think it's going to resolve.
There's only been
I'm
a
pretty
few...
sure it's going to be awful all the way through. But it's very
There's only been
rare.
a few I turned off, and then last year I made an effort to go back and watch the ones I could remember of those to see if I was right. And I'm like, I was. It's fine.
Were you?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was so happy. I'm like, oh, good. It sucked.
After a while, you have an instinct, don't you? You kind of think, no, this isn't going to get any better. But I think I had that with, he doesn't mind me saying, Bad Lieutenant. When I watched Bad Lieutenant, I really struggled with that. I was going, I don't know if I can make this to the end. And then, if you haven't seen Bad Lieutenant, obviously, Luke, you probably haven't. there's a
I know it exists.
a big scene. There's a big scene, because it's pretty horrendous. So the first sort of 40 minutes is just this man being really awful. It's like you're saying about a character you don't like. I mean, there's nothing nice about this character. And I'm sitting there going, why am I watching this character who is horrible for 40 minutes? I don't know how much more I can take of this. But the scene at the end, which makes sense of all of that, is... So what I'm trying to say is you have to go through the initial 40 minutes for that scene to work. Yeah. Because it's a transformational, it's transformational for the character. So you've got to kind of go into the depths with this character to come out the other side. But it's painful. It's really painful.
Do you ever notice when you're sharing a film with someone that often it feels like it takes so much longer to get into the good part of the film when you're sitting next to someone? It's like, oh no, it gets better.
Absolutely. I do it in my own film because I know what's coming. Because I go, hang on, just 40 minutes, and then you'll know kind of what's going on. But up to that point, nobody knows kind of what's going on. But that's not I don't see that as a bad thing because again, you've got to. If you know everything in the first 5 minutes, what's the point of watching the film? That's the thing. Now it's that thing of short attention span. All right, but a movie is not about short attention span. If you want short attention span, then don't watch a movie for
watch a short
an
film
hour for 2 hours.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense to me. You're going for that experience, and you have to give up that 2 hours. And you'll be mightily pissed off if those 2 hours in your mind have been wasted. But you've got to give it that chance.
I think at least as a filmmaker, and obviously you have the longer term perspective of this, I don't think you can ever not benefit from watching a film. Like, I think there's always you'll get some level of enjoyment in either it being bad or in looking at the way it's shot or in the way that they have done it right or wrong. Like, I think if you try hard enough, there's enjoyment in any film.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, I can't believe any filmmaker goes into this wanting to make a bad film. I mean, what filmmaker
there are a few,
wants to
aren't
make
there,
a
Robert?
bad film?
Well, people make movies that they want to feel like a bad film, but you can tell they're trying to make a good movie that just feels that way.
And then often it ends up not so bad it's good, it ends up just bad.
Yeah.
Like when people try...
And then, but the best bad movies are ones where the filmmakers were trying to make something good, and they had no idea what they're doing.
Yeah.
That's why The Room is so great, because Tommy Wiseau, I mean, he still believed for a long time after making it that it was a masterpiece. And I mean, to an extent, it is.
He might still believe that. Whether he ever realized otherwise, he came back around to buying the hype.
Yeah, and like you say,
I'm still waiting for my Tommy Wiseau backpack I ordered in December. So if Tommy Wiseau's listening, send me my backpack.
But what's a good movie? What's a bad movie? As we were saying, Luke. Someone watches your film and hates it and gives it a 1 star. Then the next person watches it and gives it 5 stars and calls it a masterpiece. Subjective. So what is it? Is it a good film or a bad film? The film hasn't changed. But for this person, it's awful. For that person, it's great. So just go with it. And as I say, as a filmmaker, you go into it desperately wanting everyone to like it. That's never going to happen. So, and you always obsess about the people who hate it. You go, why did they hate it so much? What can I do to make them like it? And you go, well, just forget about that. Concentrate on the people who liked it, because quite clearly,
I think some of the best films aren't trying to make people like it. They're just trying to appeal to that small audience that will. And I think that's off my spectrum. That's why, in terms of American comedy, I prefer Community so much over like Big Bang Theory, for example. Community goes for those obscure pop culture references, knowing that a very few people are going to get it, but those few people are going to love it.
Yeah.
Big Bang Theory goes for they're nerds because they talk about major films that everyone knows what they're talking about. I understand the appeal with Big Bang Theory, but it feels too simple and it feels like it's trying to get too many people. And obviously with the audience it pulls, it succeeds in that. Yeah, I think that's why I love stuff like Community.
Yeah, and it's we were talking about this in the other podcast, Luke, that, in the end, I can't make a film for you or for Robert. I can make a film for myself, the sort of films I like, and I hope someone else likes it as well, or likes the way I've done it. But there's no way I can sit down and try and make a film for you, because every day you change. So what today you like, you may not like tomorrow. So you can only do it, and I change as well. It's like, the worst thing about a film is you have a great idea, and then by the time you've actually made it, it might be 1 out of 10.
It's a different film.
Or you're not interested in it anymore, or the audience has moved on, or someone else has made the film, or something similar, it's a hard form of expression because you can't express it immediately. By the time the thing I want to express in a film now is going to take me minimum 5 years to express, if you see what I mean.
So to go straight back into the minute, because I realise it's been a while, we got Tim running through the corridor of red doors. I don't know why the fact that the doors are red are standing out to me so much.
Well, they're fire doors.
It is. They are fire doors, it makes sense. But we don't have that many red fire doors, do we?
Well, I mean, this is one for Richard Curtis, the colour red. It's a cliche in films. You use red to draw attention to things. I did it in Last Witness that I took all the primary colours out. It's a cliche really in colour palette. A lot of directors use it, and I nicked from the best. And I only use red when something bad happens. And it's a subtle way of doing it, but it's very effective.
So I think are we go straight into 29, which is such a good minute.
Yeah, he comes to the outside of the dressing room door for Thomas Sirwell and knocks.
I mean, I feel like to an extent, Richard Griffiths is like one of the only people who could have played this role. Not in the nasty way as to how the character is, but just in the sense of being that old, well-known, well-loved actor.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love this scene with him. It's just, again, going back to what I was saying before, a tiny little part, but you've got absolutely the right casting here for that. We see him on stage later on, but ultimately this is the scene. This is the one. And it is that thing, just the way he looks. He's doing his makeup. He's doing his own makeup, and he's just...
I think he's even cutting his nose hairs, which is even better.
Is it even better?
And what I love is the fact that it's only half of his face that's got the makeup on it.
It's just that class, your typical kind of theatre. Is the theatre actor, you can almost smell the kind of the sweat in that room. This is something he's been doing all his life, and he's come to he's a consummate actor, theatre actor, and he's this kind of guy coming and saying, let's talk about the script. It's kind of so kind of silly, and his reaction to it is just priceless. It's just, and the kind of comic timing is brilliant.
So according to my notes, the makeup on one side of his face was Richard Griffiths' idea, and he's not credited for being in the film.
Nope.
He's only got a thanks credit, which I guess is something to do with his contract, I'd imagine.
I have no idea. No idea.
They didn't say it, but the fact that him and Richard E. Grant both got thanks credit rather than cast credit makes me sort of wonder whether it means that they, to do with how much they're paid. And
I figured it was a union thing. They were doing it for cheap and didn't want to force larger payment or anything.
Possibly, but what's great about it is this is exactly, the best example is Seven, because nobody knew that Kevin Spacey was the villain. Again, Luke, I don't know if you've seen it, but obviously, I've just ruined it for you.
Bits.
If I have.
I know of it.
And I was the same as everybody else when he came in. He got his Kevin Spacey, and it was great. It was fantastic. And he said, I don't want to be credited up front. So in this case as well, this thing, these are small little parts. So if you put Richard E. Grant and Richard Griffiths at the top or in the credits, you would expect them to be in the film a lot more.
Yeah.
Whereas here, these are just, these are the tiniest of roles. They're a device.
This was Richard Griffiths' last role,
yep.
actually, before he passed away.
Yeah.
Well, fantastic. Well, what a awful that he passed, but what a great kind of memory. Just this little scene, I just think is fantastic. I think it's just fantastic.
And it was apparently really great for him and Richard E. Grant because it was the first time they'd worked together since Whitnell and I.
Well, what great memories. I mean, it's just fantastic. I mean,
which I still need to see. I'm planning on watching Whitnell and I this week.
You'll love Whitnell and I. I think
it's been on my shelf for like a year. And I know I'm going to enjoy watching it, but it's like whenever I sit down to watch a film, I just forget that I own it. So
you will, you really will like it. I think it's the right time for you to watch that. We were talking about when the right time to watch a film is. This is definitely a good time for you to watch with Neil and I.
The lines are, hello, Sir Tom. I'm a friend of Harry's. How's it going with the lines? I'm sorry, what do you mean, the lines? It's just, in the court scene, some of those lines are pretty complex. I just thought maybe it might be worth, having one last look at the lines before you go on. Little refresher. And he says a word we're not saying on the show, followed by, off out of here, you arsing lunatic. Get out, you ginger twerp. Go on. Patronising piece of... And then I do love his delivery of that line. Like, I think Richard Curtis used pretty much as much strong language as you can use in a 12 film.
Yeah.
in this film. I know it's an R in the States, and I think each use of it doesn't feel out of place, doesn't feel gratuitous. Like, every use of strong language feels justified and so brilliant.
Yeah, and I think that's the best way of using, you know, foul language, if you like. There's people deliver it really well. I just remember, and it's also just, it is a vernacular. I remember, you know, when I worked on a construction site, and you know, everybody talks differently. So I was on the site, and I was ultimately, because I was a student, I was talking to everybody. So one minute you're talking to a surveyor or a manager, next minute you're talking to the guy who's, you know, the digger driver. And you know, the surveyor is university educated. Obviously, his language is very different to the digger driver, whose every second word is the F word. You know, but you don't notice it. He just and it's funny, and it's just great listening to him, because it's just part of the way his character. And this is the same. And it's something about posh people when they swear, which is funny.
Yeah.
Well, it's like Lindsay Duncan later on in the film. There's something so powerful in her delivery of "I'm absolutely effing furious."
Yeah.
With the idea of life without your father. Like, if she was a character who was effing and blinding all the time, you wouldn't notice.
Exactly.
But the fact that she's such a reserved character, you know that it took a heck of a lot for her to say that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to an extent, in the one use of strong language I've got in Unstable, when Adam says, "My life is in a effing mess," that was the same delivery. Lindsay Duncan was the sort of delivery I was thinking at that point. It's like, it needs to be effective. And I mean, I don't mind when it's within a character in a film for someone to swear quite a lot, but obviously I prefer it if they don't. But yeah, it's like, so it's always nice when the words are delivered in such a way where it would be so difficult to get offended.
Yeah, I mean, it's the way Harry delivers it. You know, you can't be offended by, you know, it's a frustration coming out.
It's within character.
Yeah, and I remember, still to this day, I will not swear in my mum's house. I can't do it, because if I swear in my mum's house, I hear it and I feel awful. But the minute I step out of the house, I'll swear blind, you know, and I don't even hear it. That's the difference, that you're very aware of what you're saying. And if you're in a particular kind of company, you know, you're not even aware of how much you're swearing. And Robert, this is one for you. I mean, 80s American movies. Yeah. I watch back at them now. There is so much swearing.
Oh, yeah.
In those films. To the point I'm going, I don't remember there being this much swearing in these films. I mean, the F word is used, to me, too much, because it loses its effect.
It's lost its effect completely. So that's why it's such a relief in films like this, when it's like, actually, you know what, its effect has come back for a minute.
I think it's in a lot of cases, it's a lazy way to shock. I think now, you know, before, when people were a lot better spoken and it was a big deal to kind of swear, now people just swear all the time. But as I say, it loses effect. You know, it's sometimes used in a very lazy way by a lot of people, and it's kind of become a cultural thing that everybody swears. But as I say, why, you know?
When you've got films where people don't much and then they do, it's great. Steve Martin in Planes, Trains and Automobiles, that would be like a PG film if it wasn't for that
one time
one scene where he says, I think it's like 17 or 18 F words. I'm not certain. Listeners can tune into the Planes, Trains and Automobiles episode of Please Be Seated.
I'm in that episode of the Next Scene podcast is what it's called now, but when they did Planes, Trains and Automobiles,
they can listen to both.
In that one.
So if they can listen to both our podcast spots on Planes, Trains and Automobiles.
I can't believe About Time was an R in America. Was it an R?
Yeah.
Was it R-rated? Well, that's
wild. That's weird to me. Yeah, it's a family film to me. Like, yeah, there's bits, but it's a film which I quite like watching with my family.
And as you say, you know, it's a classic thing in America that, you know, you have a couple of swear words in a film and it's R-rated.
Yeah,
but you'll have
ticking, aren't you? More than
an action
context.
movie where people are being shot all over the place, and it's a 15 or a PG-12 or something, or a PG-13. Yeah. So, you know, again, this thing of violence seems to be okay, but swearing is a real no-no.
Yeah, isn't Taken PG-13 in the States?
Probably. I don't know.
Okay, it's an 18 for us. I haven't actually seen Taken, to be honest, but I know enough of it, where I find it kind of, there's a film which is an 18 here and PG-13 there. So.
Well, that's it.
Taken is PG-13. Yeah.
It's not a PG-13. That is not a PG-13 movie by any stretch of the imagination. That's just, you know, that shouldn't be. You know, so It's weird. I don't understand that kind of classification. I know it's business, but still, that's kind of...
Well,
that's
it's like
wrong,
this
isn't it?
movie, I think part of the reason it's a rated R in America was because nudity.
Oh, yeah.
Which, if you think of this movie, it's like, where is there
you
nudity?
have to think for a minute. Hang on. And it's the Kate Moss.
It's Kate Moss photos on the wall.
No.
Yeah.
Really?
I mean, and
that's-
possibly
that's-
because they say more than... Oops, you'll have to bleep that one, Luke.
Yeah.
They say that more than just once, which we generally will... You'll allow one as long as you're not talking about the act of doing it. But if you do more, it's good. The rating's going to go up.
Again,
We have
I
very
mean,
specific, odd,
Yeah, whereas we're context
weirdly conservative,
more than number of
prude
times.
standards, except when it comes to violence.
Well, that's it. That's. I mean, that's always been there, but that's
Yeah.
kind of shocking, isn't it? Because I mean, there's the scene where he first sleeps with her, which is on rewind. He does it 3 times, 4 times, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be a
That's
very
mild
uncomfortable
nudity.
week of episodes.
Then
Yeah,
there's-
that's mild.
Then
Yeah,
there's
well,
the
it's
other
implied,
one,
isn't it? It's
this
all like-
the where she says, "Okay, I'll take off an item of clothing for every decision you make."
Yeah, she walks around with no shirt, but she's got her hands on her breasts
Yeah, so I
for
mean,
a whole scene.
like you say, what nudity?
That's not it. Right.
Yeah, I feel like your eyes in the Kate Moss scene aren't drawn to the Kate Moss pictures.
No, not at all.
Like, and yeah, that's the thing.
But what's wrong with the
And-
nudity? Then you got that's like a moral issue as well. I mean, it's not pornography. It's not. It's an artistic photograph, isn't it?
Well, that's where the BBFC tend to stand. If it's not in sexual context, like they got in a lot of trouble. I think it was like in the 1920s or something for passing a naturist documentary at you because there's no material that's offending anyone in it. It's just a. But yeah, stuff like that. Life of Brian's a 12A now in the UK.
Yeah.
So things like that, like we don't mind in terms of the context. I think Kramer versus Kramer, I think, has got some really brief nudity in it.
Yep.
Or like the Carry On films and things like that. Like they're fine at PG here. I don't know what they are in the States, but yeah, it is kind of odd that sometimes I think that's what it is with the States and your age rating system. I'd love to get someone from the MPAA on this at some point. Actually, we've had BBFC on Please Be Seated. We've got to have someone from the MPAA.
Well, and then the MPAA claims they don't have specific standards. And documentaries have shown that if the producers or the distributor is big enough, the standards change too. So
Yeah. Well, you can imagine because I mean, a lot of films they go for that rating because they want a bigger audience.
yeah,
The whole thing of you don't want a high rating because you want that middle ground.
Yeah.
Ultimately, don't
the
you?
BBFC will stick with their stand. And I mean, I can say this. I assume you're involved slightly because but I guess it's more your distributors that sort out the age rating, is it, with the BBFC, or did you have any conversation there at all?
Myself for Last
Yeah.
Witness. Well, I knew I always wanted it to be a 15 because again, I wanted the audience. So
Yeah.
I was already aware going into it what I could and could not get away with.
As I was with 12A for Unstable, and I know that when you fill out the form for the BBFC, I mean, there was no reason I was getting it age rated other than the fact that I like age ratings and I was going to spend 60 quid on doing it for the sake of that. So when you fill out the form for BBFC, they do ask you what age rating you're after. They can't guarantee you get it, but they can advise cuts or they could advise
That's
that you
right.
add stuff.
Yeah.
Or
They'll say if you want a 15, well, you have to cut this out. But if it's an 18, but if you make these cuts, it becomes a 15, all that, and then it's your decision from an artistic
and
level.
they have done it the other way around as well. Like they weren't allowed to tell me what it was, but I know that it was said that there was a stand-up comedian who had used the C word several times in his act, but he'd bleeped it. They wanted an 18, but he got a 15. They basically said, if you want an 18, just cut the bleeps out.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, and I mean, but,
so they can advise it both ways.
but I remember all the way back from, when I started, this was always the issue because the rating becomes part of the promotion because, if it's an 18 or if it's then people are expecting that film to be quite hard and, or violent or a lot of nudity or whatever. So, that's hitting that audience, and that audience, if that's the audience you're going after, then they're expecting something quite tough. So a 15, people will go, oh, right, well, okay, it's not going to be that tough. It's going to be a kind of family friendly. But 15 is kind of a good, you can still get away with quite tough stories.
The most films under any category is 15.
Yeah, and I'm not surprised by that at all.
and here it's
That
probably
seems to be
PG-13. Same reason.
But, right, when I was at school, the minute a film is banned, or if it's an X film as it was at the time, those are the films you want to see because as a teenager you want to see all
shame
the
we
stuff
don't get
you
that.
can't see.
Yes, when's the last time we've had a banned movie?
Well, yeah, but
I don't think there's been a major one in my lifetime. Oh, there was that. What was it called? Blue Story or something? What's it called? That was banned for a while because the fights happened.
Well, that's Blue Story, yeah. But again,
Blue Story, yeah. I haven't
it's probably
seen it, but that
the
wasn't
best
really a
thing.
ban,
It's probably the best thing that happened to that film because then everybody wanted to see what the fuss was about.
And I think there's definitely some films under higher age ratings where you think, why is it under that? Why has it got that? But yeah, it helps us the marketing. Anyway, to continue, minute. We have. Is there anything on the visuals at all, or do we go straight? Well, yeah,
because Sir Tom. The great thing about his character.
Oh yeah, he looks
after
at the
Tim
script.
leaves, he picks up the script, he flips to the page, and then looks over at the door before he looks down at the lines and goes over them. Yeah. So he's looking. He's got like a highlighted paragraph on that page, and he's just gonna check.
Yeah, again, I love it. Again, it's that thing of, as you say, it's visual. It's that thing of visual filmmaking. You know, the script, the dialogue is all great, but it's the visual. Turn the sound off. You know, what are you getting from that film? Do you know what's going on?
I guess I told you, didn't I, Piotr? That like the best review I got for Unstable was someone saying, "I understand what happens with the film when I put it on mute."
Yeah.
Like it's the best thing.
That's every film. I honestly, I don't know where I heard that from, but someone said that. And I do think that's a real mark of I think any film that we like, we should watch with the sound off and see if it still works. And I think it absolutely will. So, you know, Godfather with the sound off, Raiders with the sound off, you know, Seven with the sound off. I'm sure.
I mean, technically I am now, I guess, because I've got the transcript on one monitor and I've got the video on another monitor. So I am looking at the film each minute without the sound on.
And it is, I mean, what that does, like you say, because you're so used to listening, you know, turn the sound off, and you have to focus on the pictures, and then you absolutely appreciate all those things we talked about. You know, the production design, the costume design, the color palette. You know, the blocking of the actors. You know, the reactions of the actors. You know, you should absolutely know what they're saying without having to hear what they're saying.
One thing so when we cut to actually seeing the play, obviously it's a legal drama. It interests me that it's never mentioned the fact that Tim is a lawyer and the play is about law. Like, I feel like there'd be at least some sort of line or something about it. But then once again, I like the fact that there isn't.
Well, it comes back to why there's no reason he needs to be a lawyer in the movie either. But the connection between that and the play is nice. Because he's fixing a legal thing here, we can understand what he might do on his day job later.
And I think maybe it almost gives us that comfort again. Like, the fact that it's a situation on stage that we're already familiar with from Tim's work. And so the only line that we get of that is, and now the defence. Yep. But even the way this is shot, like, it was all done within a day, because they only had the two Richards for the day, I'm pretty sure. But it is wonderfully shot. And once again, Richard E. Grant, like, you think Richard Griffiths, it's like, okay, you know, that's a celebrity cameo, and then there's Richard E. Grant as well.
And you see him sitting there before he does anything too. It's like, what's he doing there?
It's not even like a grand reveal of him. It's just like, and Richard E. Grant's there now,
and that's great. And that's great for us watching it as well, because that's so much fun. You know, I love watching films, especially when you don't know they're in there. You know, and it's again great casting, and because he's such a good actor, when he dries, you know, that's the fun of it all. And obviously the way the whole thing is structured anyway is you know, he's led us down this alley, and we're all comfortable and we're all happy. We're sitting there with him. He's done the right thing. He's sorted it all out, and he hasn't.
And they're both well-loved British actors, so the fact that we're seeing them on stage, it's not out of place. Like, they're in their zone. They could have been, like, if he didn't say Sir Tom, you could almost assume that Richard Griffiths is playing himself and Richard E. Grant's playing himself. Like, obviously caricatured versions of them, but...
You totally believe it. You know, it's in London, it's the Old Vic. Why wouldn't they be on stage?
So, have we got any sort of final comments on this minute?
No, I'm just reiterating what I said before. I think, you know, there are no small parts. You know, you want the best actor for every little part. You know, I remember wanting that in the film I made. You know, even your extras, you know, everybody who's in the frame, every part is important, even if it's one line, because of that thing of, you know, you can have a great film, but if that one part or that one line, a bit like in the play, you know, everything went well up to that point until he dried, and that's what everyone's got to remember.
Oh yeah, I remember heavily directing my extras in Unstable. Like, it was like, we've only got a couple of extras, but I remember putting a lot of focus onto making sure that they were being good extras.
I mean, do you remember? I mean, it's not in our minute, but do you remember when Richard E. Grant actually dries, and and Richard Curtis cuts to the guy playing the soldier, and he kind of blows his cheeks or whatever, and it's even that little moment's great. They're all suffering.
Is that next episode? Do we touch on that?
I don't remember if the soldier's the next one or the one after, but it's getting there. Speaking of extras, though, I do now have a last note for this minute, because when they cut to the audience shot and Tim and Harry are sitting there, there's this one woman off to the left that you can tell is leaning just to make sure the camera sees her. She's not looking at the camera, but you can tell she's leaning around the person in front of her. I'm like, stop it.
Hang on, how close is she to Tim so I can try and...
She's a few rows back and in like top left corner of the frame. You can see her, she's just leaning out away from behind someone.
Oh, that's so obvious now you've said it!
The one for me is rewatch Mission Impossible, Tom Cruise, the first Mission Impossible. Right at the end, he's sitting in a pub by the Thames with Ving Rhames.
Yeah.
And there's two girls in the middle of the frame. And I can't watch. I'm just looking at the two girls. It so looks like that was just either somebody's girlfriend that said, "Oh, you can sit it's the last shot. You can sit in the frame with Tom Cruise and Ving Rhames," because they just don't look like extras. They just are not being natural.
Some of the extras in the room are a bit similar.
They're aware of the camera.
Like Robert, like in the coffee cafe scene in the room. Like some of the extras in the background of that are... Well, I guess they're not extras because they technically have lines.
Yeah, they have lines. But one of them, he keeps doing motions in the background, like he wants to make sure he's still in the shot.
And he's still one of the best actors in the film because of it.
So many times you kind of, you get that comment of, it's a great film, but you see that guy in the back of shot there, you're as good as your worst extra.
And once you notice those things, you notice them every time.
Yeah, it's the stormtrooper in Star Wars. Once that's pointed out, everybody watches for it. It's awful.
So it could be good publicity to the film to an extent, but it could also ruin...
If they're doing if the extra's doing the right thing, like the end of Teen Wolf, where you have people always say it's a guy with his pants down, but if you watch the scene, it's a woman who stands up, but in the last shot, in the background, her pants are unzipped. And everyone's like, what is going on there? It's just weird.
But I mean,
once people saw it gets publicity for the movie.
When you look at
another
Star
reason
Wars,
to watch the film, don't watch the film with the sound off, and now watch the film just for the extras. Just watch the film and just watch the background.
Ignore the action.
I've noticed myself doing that, or being a lot more finicky since I'm doing Unstable. Being a lot more finicky with watching films and looking at extras, and almost unintentionally looking for continuity errors. I've noticed that a lot. Like I'm watching it and I realise partway through I'm just looking in the background trying to find something that I can say is wrong with this film, just because I'm so used to doing it with my own.
No, I tell you what. Once you get into continuity, just watch your favourite films and see how many continuity errors there are. I mean, it's just so difficult.
These are the top 10 things to do during lockdown. Watch the same film over about 4 times. Once on its own. Once with the sound off.
Once on mute. Once turned away from the screen, so you just hear it.
Once with the extras, and once with the continuity.
Once for continuity. But continuity,
and then break it down a minute at a time.
You'll see how much continuity you can get away with. It's almost like it's like a good thing, because you're so... When you first start making films, you're so kind of trying to be hot on continuity. You pick the glass up at this point, and then I've seen so many Hollywood movies that the continuity is all over the place, and you don't care because you don't notice it, because it's where your eye is. When I was doing a TV show, Luke, literally it went out. It wasn't one of mine, it was luckily, but it went out, and there was a cameraman with the camera in frame, and no one noticed it. And it's gone through, editing, it's gone through grading, it's gone through dub. It's gone through, everybody's watched it, and it went out with a cameraman clearly in shot with a camera.
Wow.
It reminds me
that's how bad it can get.
Reminds me of Doctor Who when they announced Pearl Mackie to play Bill as the companion, and they did the whole announcement video, and it was like one of the biggest moments on television that year. It was part of a big sporting event, and they missed out a space. It's introducing Pearl Mackie as Bill. And so people, like Doctor Who fans for ages, were just and still do, just refer to her as Bill. Like I remember I listened to a 5 Who fans podcast, like the main like Billy and John, and they literally hello, I'm As Billy, and I'm here with As John, and it's just like, oh. So things like that. I feel like it's thinking, the number of people that have to see these things and approve it, and people just don't notice.
Yeah, because it depends where your eye is in the frame. You don't look at everything in the frame, and you do it. It's how you frame things. It's how you block things. You draw people's eye to this thing you want them to look at, and that's directing as well. I want you to look at Tim. I don't want you to look at the stairs. If I want you to look at the stairs and not at Tim, if something's going to happen in the background, like the classic sort of horror cliche, then you do it. You pull focus to it. So you're doing that all the time. So that's why if something in deep background is slightly wrong, you shouldn't be looking at it anyway. I've done my job wrong if you are looking at it and you do spot it.
Yeah.
So, Piotr, where can our listeners find you on social media?
At Piotr Szkopiak and hashtag Piotr Szkopiak. And on Facebook, my Facebook page, Piotr Szkopiak, that's where I list most of my news about The Last Witness.
And Robert?
My website, lemmingdrops.com, which includes links to all my podcasts, including The Room Minute, looking at the room 1 minute at a time. And on social media, Robert E.G. Black.
Listeners can find me on Twitter at llama_bottle0, Instagram at the Ginger Luke, Facebook Luke Allen Film. Everything is at lukeallen.co.uk, and this podcast, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at 2 Minutes About Time. Thank you so much for listening. Hope you will tune in on Friday. And can any of you think of an interesting way to say goodbye? In fact, Piotr, what's the Polish way of saying goodbye?
Do widzenia.
There we go. The 2 Minutes About Time theme is performed by Ethan O'Mahony and is a cover of the About Time theme, originally composed by Nick Laird-Close. 2 Minutes About Time is a production of Lemming Drop Studios in association with Bottle O Productions.